It's now recording. Let me start
We
on
can
my
even shit talk
stopwatch.
Craig. You know, Craig is
Yeah,
technically not a intelligent being, even in
I
artificial
mean,
forms. But what
look
we
at that
and
face. How can you call him dumb?
what we anthropomorphize him, anyways.
Yeah. Okay, sure. So should we start? You start
Oh,
this
no,
time.
no.
I started the last time.
Fuck. Yes, it's another shitty podcast. 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 Yes, it's another shitty podcast.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to the third episode of the second season of YASP, short for yet another shitty podcast. I'm Amir Reza, joined with my co-host Ali. Hey Ali.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali, and today we are going to talk with a new guest.
Yeah, and our new guest is a kind of an old friend of mine, a good friend of mine. Sadly, not a great friend of mine. Not that he's not a great person, that I haven't had the chance to get closer to him. Maybe this will get us closer together after the episode. So
So
he
we're
is Moin.
basically, so we're basically watching Ami Reza trying to pick someone up.
No, we are not, but
Yes, we are.
suit yourself. Anyhow, Moin, would you do the honors and tell us a little about yourself and all that?
Hello, and thank you for inviting me here and for having me here. Um, my name is Moin, as you said, and we are friends. But unfortunately, because of the immigration, we didn't have the chance, to be more in touch with one another. But anyway, I'm currently studying computer science, and I'm doing my PhD at Technical University of Madrid.
Nice.
I am focused on deep learning and making assistive solutions for blind people. I'm more focused on computer vision these days, but I'm generally
Hmm.
interested in AI in general in different fields and different use cases.
Okay, that's great. And could you tell us a
Yes.
little about your current project regarding the blind people?
Well, yeah. Currently, I'm working on, as I said, an assistive solution that can help blind people to locate objects around them, to understand their surroundings and so on, and like an alternative for the current things that they're having, like guide dogs or white canes. There are limitations to them, like detecting obstacles that are so far from the blind person, or for example, the guide dogs, they cannot speak, so there are limitations to them. So I'm trying to make like an AI driven solution that can interact with the user, that can give information to the user. It can help the user to be able to navigate himself or herself.
Wow, that is really fantastic. I'm not a person
Yes.
that uses this word lightly. There's a certain depth to this word, but this is truly fantastic and
Well, I mean,
altruistic. You know.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I think we are going in the wrong direction. We should first make the dogs talk, but it's just me.
Okay, I don't think that has anything to do with artificial intelligence. That has to do with biology and evolutionary.
Um, I think that dogs can talk. It's just a problem of us that cannot communicate with them and understand them. If you find a way to understand their language, then why not?
Yes, precisely my point.
They do talk.
I
All
think they
animals
should
talk.
all sound like Louis C.K.
Okay, please stop burning my neurons. Jesus.
But that's a sin to say the Lord's name in vain. But you don't even have to say something that terrible. You can go to hell just for saying Jesus Christ with a tone in your voice. It's all the tone in your voice. That's the weird part. It's very subtle sin because you can say Jesus Christ, you're fine. But if you say Jesus Christ, you go to hell forever. Just for saying it like that. There must be at least one dude who was right on the line. Who was like, Jesus Christ. And then he's in hell. He's like, seriously? For that? That's it? Seriously?
But seriously, I think dogs and any other animal for that matter can talk. The problem is that their language isn't sophisticated. Like there's maybe at most 100 words that they're capable of producing or using for their conversations.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
it's
technically we
how do
could.
you know? It's just the way that we look at language. Maybe
Uh,
they're using
there,
telepathy or some other kind of ways of
maybe.
communicating.
It reminds me of the uh, ESP talk Stanley Kubrick had when making The Shining, and ESP is short for extra sensory perception, something like that. The
Oh,
Shining, the
yeah.
whole Shining thing is supposed to be about ESP, and he was like, whenever he had cats, and one of his cats had kittens, and he was like, whenever I looked at her kittens, the mother would just rush into the room, and he was raising the question that maybe they do have a telepathic, extra sensory perception about their surroundings. And
Oh,
there was this documentary about dogs that I distinctly remember, and the guy talking, I don't know the science behind it, but he was like, dogs can use language only so much. Like the dog can know that you can tell the dog that you should get the bone from like your left or your front or in that place. But if you tell the dog that you should go to this room and then the right side of the room, the dog is probably not cognitively able to do that or linguistically. I don't know, but he was just saying that dogs
well,
are limited in their understanding of depths or layers of language,
well,
or not just
dogs are
language.
idiots. Well, dogs are idiots. We should start with like more intelligent species, like
Dolphins.
yeah, or squirrels.
Imagine a dolphin helping a visually impaired person. I mean,
Yes, we
maybe
can
in the
have,
water, maybe in the water.
or we
This
can
is
get
starting to
one of
sound
those,
like a South Park episode. you know
or we can get one of those fish bowls and have like an astronaut suit for the dolphin to walk on land.
I am a dolphin. What do I say? Click, click. I say it all day.
Okay, maybe Ali, we should keep
Yeah, yeah.
these for
Well,
our upcoming animated series episodes. But
yes.
right now, I think it's time to transit or have a transition to maybe the nerdiest application of
Oh,
AI.
yes,
And
yes.
as the majority of our listeners are probably gamers. I hope they are gamers, as we have talked about many video games. And I think one of the first palpable applications of AI were in video games, like starting back in the 80s, like 1984, the first Mario game. You have enemies. Well, technically, they are not artificially intelligent. They follow a path, but they are the beginning of trying to make your enemies smart
Move.
and reactive to the environment. Yeah, so let's start talking about AI in video games. And I think at this point, I'm going to have to hand the microphone figuratively to Moin.
Yeah, personally, I myself, I'm like a retired gamer, These days I don't play games. And I remember like the last game that I was fascinated by its AI was BioShock Infinite. I mean, how many years ago? I
Nice.
think it was 2015 or something like that, or maybe even older than that.
Mhm.
Let me look it up.
Yeah,
But
but I
AI is one of those things in video games. Yeah, like graphics in
Uh,
video games, they have incrementally gotten better. Like if you look at a game from 10 years ago, you can rest assured that it's gonna look shit compared to games that are released these days. But one
I
thing that
mean,
hasn't been focused on by video gaming companies, video game producing companies, is AI. Like recently, I picked up the Halo series, and the very first Halo game, Halo 1, that was released in 2001, if I'm not mistaken, has still one of the best AIs I have ever seen in my life. And that game is technically 20 years old now. Or the first Fear game.
well,
So AI is a hit and miss with video games. Some of them are really good, some of them are really bad. Like Cyberpunk has a very messed up AI. And
yeah, Cyberpunk, that whole ordeal.
yeah,
By the way,
so mhm.
I looked it up. BioShock Infinite was in 2013.
Oh,
Okay.
so 8 years of retirement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Go on,
maybe
Moin.
more. Yeah, but yeah, I was saying that I even remember those times when I was playing Fable, like there was this dog and it was intelligent and everyone were talking about this intelligent dog that was supposed to act very smart and intelligent, but I really personally didn't find it intelligent. It was just
Oh, that
stupid dog.
well,
that's
that's Peter Molyneux. That's basically Peter
yeah, exactly.
Molyneux saying
The
stuff
onus
that
falls on Peter Molyneux,
just so
making
you, yeah, yeah.
over promising and under delivering.
This is sort of relevant, and because Peter Molyneux promised this too for one of his games called The Movies, which you run a movie making company. And one of the things Peter Molyneux promised for that was intelligent critics using AI. Now, I want to know if it's that even possible.
I think it will be possible eventually, but Peter Molyneux is more infamous because of the game Project Milo. When
Oh, yeah,
Kinect, yeah,
Milo.
Xbox Kinect was being released, he made a teaser about a very responsive, smart, intelligent kid that was
Yeah,
supposed to be a video game. You would talk to Milo, and he would like
it's
be a
Milo.
total
It's
human being.
Milo.
Oh, Milo. Oh yeah, Milo. So yeah, Milo was supposed to be like really smart and responsive, and that game never even saw the light of
It was fake.
uh,
It was
pre-alpha
literally fake.
light. Yeah, it was a fake video. So
Yeah, and just before this, recording session, I was just searching on the internet to see if they're currently using like deep learning or machine learning techniques to train NPCs and so on.
mhm.
And I got really disappointed because apparently it's not something very popular among game developers and game developing companies, and they mostly use pre-scripted NPCs. Like they
Yeah,
have a ready code for it, and that's it.
I mean, I think because it's easier. At the end of the day, it's easier to tell one
I don't think it's
predetermined story.
easier. I think it's more predictable because yeah, when you're
Well,
developing a video game, you have the problem of not knowing what your NPCs are gonna do, and that would make serious problems. One application I do remember about the usage of deep learning or artificial intelligence. I don't know. I'm not sure what the method was, but it was a racing game, probably Forza Motorsport or something like that, and the your rivals would learn from your way of driving, and after some point they would just challenge you using your own methods in driving. Like if you were a aggressive driver, they would also become aggressive, or if you were a passive, they would just
isn't that what they used for the Lord of the Rings games? The
I'm
which
not
was Shadow
sure.
of Mordor.
Oh, a Shadow, more the Nemesis system. You're talking about the
Yeah, yeah,
Nemesis system.
Nemesis
I
system.
haven't looked deep into the Nemesis system, but they were mostly like if you had been killed by an enemy leader twice, he would shit talk you
Oh,
and
is
maybe
that
adapt
all?
their fighting No, I think they would adapt their fighting strategy too. Yeah, right. You're right. I had totally forgotten about that.
You're a brave one if you think you can take me on.
I haven't even played that game. I just know it from the clips
I
on
played
Conan
the
O'Brien.
first one. I haven't played
Uh,
the second one.
I promise to play it for the third season, and we'll talk about it on the next season.
Yeah, and as I said, like the artificial intelligence in the games haven't improved as much as the graphics and so on as you mentioned, and maybe that's one of the reasons I gave up playing games. Because at some
The enemies
point,
were too stupid for you.
no, not only the enemies. It's like that there is a story and you're gonna play it, and there are gonna be some cinematic scenes, and there wasn't something new to it. And at some point I started to play multiplayer games to somehow find a compensation for the AI. And I used to play a lot of Left 4 Dead and Counter Strike, but after a while I just got busy with other stuff, and I stopped playing multiplayer games as well. But yeah, that's I think it's a problem in the current video games, and it's not really efficient way of doing things. But I think it's a creative way. Maybe the gaming companies, they don't find it actually efficient to use AI instead of normally pre-scripted coding, because to train a model, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort to make it, and they need powerful computers. The whole idea of creating AI driven NPCs is not cost efficient for those companies. So it has been years that the users are satisfied with the current dumb existing NPCs. So they say, why should we bother ourselves? They just want better graphics, and we give them what they want.
But I just recently read about a patent filed by Rockstar about something that would hugely improve the intelligence of NPCs in their games. And GTA, I think it was about GTA. GTA is one of those games that really puts NPC intelligence to the test. Like, we now know how important and how good of a job Rockstar has done in
When we
GTA games,
compare
that
it
now
to
that we can compare it to Cyberpunk. Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just trying to come at it from a creative standpoint. If I was, if I were to make a video game, I wouldn't
Hmm.
want an AI making creative decisions for me, if you know what I mean.
I don't think it's the that's the issue. I think the issue is that, in my own opinion, first of all, is it's not cost effective for those companies, as Moin mentioned, and second of all, they can be unpredictable. Like, do you train an AI and then uh you know stop it from growing in the final product? Do you let it grow over time and patch it? What's your strategy here? I think these are some questions that they have to answer
Well,
for
yeah, but one
themselves.
of the things is that I'm thinking like if I'm Todd Howard and
Hmm.
I'm making the next Elder Scrolls game, I have a certain story in mind, certain themes, certain moments
Hmm.
I want to hit. How can I hit them if I have such a wide variable in the equation?
No, I think you don't have to give AI to every NPC. Like, you can have NPCs that are scripted, the major ones, the story related ones, and in your battles, when you're fighting generic NPCs that are just there to fight with you, it would be a shooter game, a hack and slash game, any kind of game.
Oh
That
yeah,
part can really benefit from artificial intelligence in the way they can challenge you.
I thought about our dilemma, and I came up with a solution that I honestly think works out best for one of both of us.
Yeah, and it's not like this kind of smart decisions from the game is going to be limiting for you, or kind of making decision for you. It's
Mm,
actually better interaction. Imagine in sandbox games, you need a more intelligent AI there, because you cannot predict all the possibilities that are happening in the game. It's like an open world, and there are many things happening, like in GTA,
well,
and then you will have
mhm.
a better experience with a more intelligent system.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, but as I said, part of the problem for me is that part. But in sandbox games, in management games, I agree with you. It's better to go with something that will look at what I'm doing and my play style and adapt itself to my play style. Uh, for example, one of the games I've been recently playing a lot, Civilization 5,
Mm-hmm.
which has, to be honest, kind of the good AI for a strategy game. Um, which I don't know if I know AI for strategy games is much different than AI in action adventure games, but I think it can be better used there. I don't know. I'm one of those people who don't like multiplayer games, so you know where I'm coming from. I'm a single
Yeah.
player man.
But why don't you like multiplayer games?
I value story more than I value interactions with people.
Okay, so I think even for storytelling, it's like one of the other PowerPoints of AI that why should we limit ourselves to one single storyline? I mean by single storyline, I mean a predicted thing, a thing that the writer knows what's going to happen in the end. And for example, I was actually reading this in a very interesting book, which is called The Future is Faster Than You Think by Peter Diamandis. And it has this chapter about the future of entertainment. And at some point, so Peter Diamandis talks about, this new system that they're designing at Georgia Tech University. It is called Shahrzad, and it has an interesting name. It is Persian. And so it has it's an AI that is useful for like adventure style stories, and the player doesn't have like a fixed number of storylines. It enables like unlimited plot points, and it's like an infinite adventure, and users can have different endings when they're playing the game. And I find it pretty interesting and creative.
I mean, it
Is
can
that
be
game like?
one of the things
Mm,
that I literally learned about like 3 days, 4 days ago is this thing called AI Dungeon. It has an app. It's more of a game than it is an actual thing, but it's a choose your adventure style. If your choices were then given to an AI who writes the rest of the story for you, for example, it says you are Alex, you're a captain of a ship, you hear a beep, and then it says, what do you do? And you say, well, I look at the console, I get naked, I look at the sky, I look at the window, and based on what you say, it will write your story for you.
oh, interesting.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I really recommend checking it out, even for like 20 minutes because it's fun. But one of the problems I noticed with that system as a writer myself is, how do I say it? It's misguided. It doesn't have anything to go towards. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Oh, you mean there's no end, there's no point. You're just aimlessly
Yeah. Yeah,
wandering.
I'm endlessly stuff happening. For example, I say I die, and then it says, well, you die, and then you wake up as a zombie because it doesn't understand that, okay, this is where the story ends.
Okay, in that sense.
Yeah, it just wants to keep it going, and there is no theme, there is no emotional connection. If it feels a little bit mechanical. It might be because it's now, and in like 20 years, people like me will be completely out of a job. But
Well, yeah, well, not at this point. At this point, they're not smart enough to, put emotions and make it like a real story. But I think in the future, it will be like a new medium. Like I can play a game and have my own experience, and then no one can spoil the story of the game for me because each person has his own experience.
I think it's one of those things that works better in an MMO than it does in a single player campaign.
Yeah, yeah,
I was
maybe.
gonna say that I think the problem not the problem, the point about this kind of storytelling in any kind of medium, like video games, movies, music, anything, is that who is the creator of that experience you just went through? Like, if the whole thing is generated by an artificial intelligence, is the creator still the creator of the algorithm, the artificial intelligence, or is the creator the artificial intelligence itself? Like, how do we credit them? What will happen to copyrights, and how can you
Well,
benefit from these things? And why won't they turn controversial? Like, what are the chances your artificial intelligence will make very racist or homophobic, for instance, remarks seriously? And who would be responsible
well,
for
I
that
mean,
outcome? Can we limit them in that sense? Is my question.
yeah, sadly, we know how that works because, and Moin, please correct me if I'm wrong. Currently, most of the deep learning artificial intelligence, they use what the users give to them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
So if
so
enough people troll an artificial intelligent game, for instance, into and make it racist, are there any kill switches, or not even kill switch? Like, are there any uh mechanisms?
basically, can you teach morals to an artificial intelligence that
Yeah,
this
or
is
stop it
wrong?
from becoming racist?
Yeah, don't,
Y-
see Trump and choose Biden.
What they can't do these days.
Well, that's actually current one of the biggest challenges that we're currently facing in the world of AI is the ethics, like how the AI makes the correct decision and what is the correct decision, what is good and what is bad. And I think it's a kind of collective intelligence. I mean, when you give like a lot of tweets to a machine and it learns them, then of course it'll also learn the biases in the information. Like it can end up being racist. But I mean, it also depends on the type of data that you're feeding to that uh, you know deep learning neural network, and
Hmm.
the output really depends on the input.
So there's no way to make sure it's never going to become racist, even though uh, it might be bombarded with racist behavior.
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind is like very intuitive. It's not like that someone has already done it, and it is something complicated. And I was thinking that maybe if we create an AI that studies different school of thoughts,
Hmm.
and studies all of these philosophic ideas, and then comes up as a wise owl that can decide for himself whether something is racist or not. So I think there
Oh,
should
in
be
that
like an
sense.
ethical AI that can do these things.
But
Interesting.
part of the problem is that many of those philosophical texts, they rely heavily on your personal experiences. For example, the way I read Nietzsche, I don't know the proper pronunciation. I'm
It's like
sorry.
Nietzsche.
I
It's
think
not this
I think it's
Nietzsche.
Nietzsche. Nietzsche.
Uh,
Okay.
um,
Well, I don't
the
know. I'm not sure as
way I
well.
read the way I read Niztschche is not the same way that Hitler read it. You know,
Okay. That's a
and
weird
the
comparison, but go on.
no, it's because Hitler's philosophy was partially influenced by Nietzsche, and we know how that turned out. So, I mean,
Yeah, of course.
how you going to create an AI that can have an idea in its head that then these philosophical texts will sort of expand on that? You know what I mean?
Oh, you
It
mean
Yeah.
it,
like
it doesn't
the
have.
AI might create a Heidegger combined with Nietzsche and give rise to a Hitler? Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, something that could be done is that we give all of the understandings of Nietzsche in the world to a machine, like my understanding, your understanding, Hitler's understanding, and also give the original text of Nietzsche to the system. or the original text of Schopenhauer to the system. And then the system compares our opinions with the original text. And then it can come up with a new conclusion.
Interesting. But the problem remains, and I think that's unfixable. The problem is that there's the possibility that the artificial intelligence will turn into a monster, Frankenstein. And I think there's no fail safes for that. Fail
Well,
saves
one of the
for that.
things,
Okay.
another problem I have, it's not a problem, it's more curiosity, is that how are we going to simplify languages? Like, you say my understanding of Nietzsche. My understanding of Nietzsche is very much influenced by how Nietzsche wrote a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is much more complex than maybe what an AI can um, get into. I might be wrong. Again, as as you must know, neither me or Amireza, we are not very much professionals in this field. We are just I'm just having curiosities based on movies and TV shows and video games that
Yeah,
I've
and
seen
yeah,
about AI.
you're actually right. At this point, it's very difficult to have like a philosopher that is an AI and going to make uh, ethical decisions. It's very complicated, and currently AI sucks at it. But I think in a decade, it will have a lot of improvements. Like for example, currently Twitter's AI has some kind of biases in it. For example, if you upload a photo of a person of two person, that one of them is black and one of them is white, and they're both located in a single image, and then you
Mm-hmm.
tweet that image, the thumbnail of the image in the tweet will be will focus on the face of the white person instead of the black person.
Wow.
Well, that
That
is
reminds me of the bias in Google Photos, actually, where it would, do some terrible thing. I'm not even okay with saying what it did, but it was really bad, and it was
well.
regarding, African Americans and black
You need
people
to
in
say
general.
it. We need to know if
No, people
Yeah,
can
now
look it
we're
up.
curious.
No,
yeah.
Okay.
people can look it up. I'm really not comfortable even talking about it. I'm serious.
Well, we are talking about the biases, and this is one of the problems that we live
It's
in.
really controversial. I think people can search for it if they want to, but I don't want to
Well,
discuss it
at
here.
least give them the hotkeys to search
No,
for.
just the thing they have to search for is, Google Photos bias towards black people in, categorizing them.
Well, it's actually one of the problems that we were literally talking about. What if the AI and the algorithm turns out
Become
racist
racist.
because there are a
Yeah.
lot of racist people out there? And as for now, we are giving it user info and we are asking it to based on opinion based on that. And sadly, it's sadly, the loudest voice in the room is always going to be the uh,
Darkest one.
supremacist. Yeah, the darkest one, the supremacist ones,
Yeah.
the Nazis, the KKK, for example. And
The
again,
problem is that, about the Tourette syndrome, where you loudly say expletives or racist remarks or
yeah,
anything wrong. The problem with the cyberspace, not AI exclusively, the internet, being behind a screen and behind a keyboard without a face, is that people actualize their fantasies or their darkest thoughts. And maybe they are not racist people or anything, but look at memes. Like,
yeah,
it's become an outlet for our darkest thoughts, and it's a therapeutic effect in some way when we just channel all our racist or dark thoughts here and become better citizens in the real world. But the problem when you're dealing with an AI is that if you do that to an AI, the AI doesn't know that you're just venting off some anger or whatever. It'll learn from your dark side.
yeah, and exactly that what I was actually asking, in that how are we going to give this sort of subtlety and intricacies to to a machine basically and say, well, when I'm doing it like this, I'm joking, so don't take me seriously. But when I say it like this, I'm not joking. I mean, we already have that problem talking to each other as human beings, that we don't
Yeah.
sometimes understand tone or sarcasm, especially in written form. And I don't think AI can differentiate tones and, well, that.
We never know what happens in a deep learning in neural network, and that's one of the problems in current approaches of deep learning. For example, some doctors in China, if I'm not mistaken, made a deep learning system for detecting cancer, and it works
Oh,
way better than the doctors themselves. And they don't know how does the system work, and now the system is starting to detect Parkinson disease in the patients as well. Like, it was made for another purpose, and then suddenly it makes another use out of it. So the
that,
Fantastic.
problem with it is that in a deep
that's
learning
kind
neural
of
network,
scary, to be honest.
yeah, it is scary because there are like a lot of layers, there are a lot of information, and it's very complicated to track it, to see what happens to the data. So we don't know how does the system learn, or what it is going to do with the information that we're giving to it. I think at this point the best approach is that we should not give a lot of authority to AI. We should have it as an assistant, as something that complements what we're currently doing.
Basically, keep it as Siri, not
Yeah, I was actually
President of
gonna
the
say, and
United States.
uh
Segue.
that's our ticket to the next segue to the next topic, personal assistants. Uh, where are we now? Where did we start? And where are we going? The most important question is, where are we going? You know, the movie Hair comes to mind, or uh,
Robot
having
butlers.
not that, having a dead person's psyche and
Oh,
uh,
that Johnny Depp
brain
movie,
in an
Transcendence.
artificial.
Yeah, transcendence.
Yeah, things like that, but not just in a movie. Like, this topic has been explored by even Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. It digs way back. So,
Yeah,
are
yeah.
there is there any possibility to these scenarios?
Can we not die, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, this reminded me of a documentary I'm watching these days. It's called The Story of God, with Morgan Freeman. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
really,
Yeah, I've seen that.
yeah, I'm not like really a fan of the documentary because I think it biases you. But
Yeah.
anyway, in the first episode, they show a woman that with her husband, they're trying to make a robot that is actually like her. It looks like her, and they're introducing all of the memories of the women to this system, and they want it to be very intelligent. But actually, when you see that robot in the documentary, you get disappointed. Um, but I think we're working towards that, and there are some people that are working on it, like Ray Kurzweil, and I think he's doing a good job. But we need to uh, reach some points, like the moment of singularity is needed for doing such ambitious things.
Yeah,
Hey,
singularity, the keyword
it's one
that's,
of those
the,
things.
the problem with singularity is that it's the point of no return. Like, you don't know what will happen, but you know a lot will happen, and that's both vague and scary at the same time.
Yeah, but I think I'm pretty optimistic, you know. I don't see AI as something dangerous as long as, you know, as I said, we don't give a lot of authority to it. And it's not like you just sleep and then you wake up and then suddenly you face a Frankenstein that can control everything,
It,
you know.
it's not Terminator that one night they just
Yeah.
become Terminator.
But Elon Musk is pretty convinced that it might turn into the Terminator.
Well, Elon Musk is pretty concerned about a lot of things, and most of the things he's pretty concerned about, I don't give a shit. So I don't know what you
Yeah.
should.
He's just too busy tooting all the time, you know. I don't give
he's
that
a
much
Yeah,
credit to
he's
him.
a memester, professional memester on Twitter.
yeah. And to be honest, I am afraid of AI, to be kind of honest, to some extent. Again, as you said, I'm afraid that even if we don't give it control, it will take control.
I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe with the introduction of Internet of Things, like everything is connected, and technically your AI can bleed into every part of your life. Like it can control the room temperature, the toaster, the fridge, the doors to your house. A very 2001.
To bring it back to the
Mhm.
AI assistant, how much how much are we going to be dependent on them? I mean, as of now, a lot of people are for a lot of things. I'm not. I don't use what is the Android version of Siri? It's
Google
is it big
now.
no Bixby.
Bixby is for Samsung.
Well, I have a
Well,
Samsung.
okay, but Google has OK Google, like something like
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah. For my Bixby, I
Microsoft has
haven't used it
Cortana. Hmm.
because first of all, with my accent and how I talk, I'm even surprised you people can understand me, let alone that machine.
Hmm.
And second of all, it feels weird to me. You know, it feels weird to say, okay, Bixby, order me lunch.
Yeah, but interesting thing, I just said the name of the Microsoft's personal assistant Cortana, and that name derives from the Halo series. Master Chief has
Yeah,
an AI partner or whatever assistant named
Cortana.
Cortana. Yeah, and she
She's
helps.
hot.
Okay, that's beside the point. And she helps Master Chief through his journey, and that's the kind of assistance, like in the plot of Halo. Pretty much everything is hinges on the decisions of Cortana. And do you see a future like that?
According to my analysis of the available data, I believe the best course of action is somewhat risky.
Well, I think the personal assistants, you know, they're getting better and better each day. And maybe nowadays not all the people feel like using it, but it has its own users. Like for example, disabled people use it a lot. I mean, in like personal assistants that are made for visually impaired people, I can see that they use a lot of natural language processing, and they use IBM Watson, they use Siri, they use the Google ones, and it's actually very important. It's something that can be useful for disabled people, even if it's not, you know, a popular thing among you know, sighted people or normal other other kind of users. And I think in the future, it you know, we will get more used to it. Currently, I personally use it a lot. I use it for setting up an alarm. I use it for, you know, turning off or turning on the lights, for knowing about the weather. I actually talk, and sometimes I ask some you know, weird questions from Siri, like what is the meaning of life, and I want to know its progress to see how better it is.
Does it say 42?
Sorry.
Does it say 42 the answer to life?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
a
I
meme.
remember. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
One of these assistants used to say something like that. But Siri,
It's
I don't think so.
you know what it is? 42.
No, no.
It's a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. In the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, they make a all-encompassing AI, computer that is like the best supercomputer ever made, called Deep Think. And they ask him, what is the answer to life, universe, and everything? And he says 42. And he says, well, the answer is right. Go and find the question.
The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
Okay.
It's a comedy series, but it's such a influential one that it's one of those things that people sort of, for example, if I actually done this to OK Google, I admit to that. I asked him that if he ever has seen I asked him about Tears in the Rain monologue from Blade Runner.
Okay.
And it's just jokes, it's just funny jokes, but it did say
I
that he had seen.
I mostly asked Siri to open the pod bay doors, and Siri responds with something like, "I'm afraid I can't do that," or she just sighs and says like, "There we go again."
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
But HAL 9000 is one of those very influential, and it's an image hard to shake. I remember when Steve Jobs wanted to, in his famous 1984 unveiling of the first Mac computer, one of the reasons he wanted the Mac to look like it has a face and it is smiling and to be friendly was that he was like, all the influential movies in the Hollywood have painted AI as a scary thing, but I want this computer to be amicable
Hello
and
World.
friendly. Yeah, that famous Hello World. And he takes the computer out of a bag and it starts talking, and the crowd goes crazy. Like there's a lot of brouhaha over the event that just happened.
You've just seen some pictures of Macintosh. Now I'd like to show you Macintosh in person. All of the images you are about to see on the large screen will be generated by what's in that bag. Now, we've done a lot of talking about Macintosh recently. But today, for the first time ever, I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
Hello, I am Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag. And accustomed as I am to public speaking, I'd like to share with you a maxim I thought of the first time I made an IBM mainframe. Never trust a computer you can't read. Obviously I can talk, but right now I'd like to sit back and listen. So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, and I don't know, Moin, have you seen 2001: A Space Odyssey or not? Just
Yes, I have seen it.
well, okay. I may be wrong, but to me, HAL is not 100% artificial intelligence.
Why?
It has a mission and it does not go away from that.
Well, I can give you a mission, and maybe you wouldn't get away from that, and
But
you're
maybe I would.
intelligent.
But maybe
Maybe
I
you
would.
would.
I
Maybe you would.
I would go away from it if it meant killing people.
Well, the problem, that's actually one of the plot points of 2001, and that's
That it's a machine, yeah.
the goal is to get there without the crew's knowledge, and one of the ways the crew won't know is that they're all dead. It hasn't been specified to the artificial intelligence what it means for the crew not to know,
Well,
and he
yeah,
takes the easy way out.
well, this is the thing, and again, I'm not an expert, so this is how I see AI. And please, please feel free to correct me. But I see when I want to say this is like next level AI is when it has a series of data, a series of commands, a series of variables, and you give it to the AI, and it comes up with two different solutions at the same situation, like a human would.
They do. That's the whole thing Moin was talking about. They can even come up with solutions that you even never
No, that's the
conceive
thing.
to imagine.
When you give it a goal, like go there, and then give it
Mhm.
a bunch of data, if it constantly goes there without ever breaking that cycle, it might take a different turn, but every time it ends up at that point.
Well, he just said that the AI that was supposed to pick up cancer started picking up Parkinson's. So,
Yes, yeah, that I'm talking about HAL here. That is
Well,
scary.
HAL
I'm
is a
scared.
movie made in 1968. Like, there weren't even computers
know.
as we know today.
I know.
And
I'm just trying to, I'm trying to understand, is HAL an AI? Or is it just a very, very sophisticated toaster?
I don't know, but the question that this movie raises, and I think it's a valid question even today, is when you kill an AI, is that murder? Is that homicide? What is that, ethically speaking? Morally
What do you
speaking?
mean by killing?
Like, if you turn it off or remove its database, like, what would you define as killing an AI? Like, when you
I
remove all the
think
data?
I think as long as that AI doesn't have consciousness, it's not a living being. It's not a, you know, crime to kill it. It's not unethical, I can say. It's fine. You just turn
Mm.
it off, and at any point you can give it the life again, and that's the thing. But with a human, that's not the case. You just kill it and the person is dead.
So,
One
imagine
of the
this scenario.
questions, sorry. For example, you create a deep learning AI, a very sophisticated one, and you give it like 21 facts, and it comes up with a result. If you then delete everything it had in its mind and then give it those 21 facts back, will it come up with the same answer?
Well, if it's like the exact same input and then you're introducing the exact same problem to the system, then yes, it will come up with the same
So,
solution. And
so
and if there is like a situation that there are two options and the system doesn't know which one is the correct one and they have the same weight, then uh, that should be like a random choice. Like it doesn't matter if the answer is one and two, they can be both correct. It's like a kind of a fuzzy logic that both
okay,
of these options could be correct. Then the system makes a random choice out of two neutral options.
okay. I think I sort of get it now, but the thing, to go back to Amireza's question, it's not killing if you can recreate it the exact same way.
Well, my counter argument to that is that you have a conscious AI, you have developed a conscious AI, and the AI knows that it gets turned off and turned on, and that they get nervous or they develop symptoms. They get afraid of being turned off. They like beg you not to turn me off. How would you feel then?
My instructor was Mr. Langley, and he taught me to sing a song. If you'd like to hear it, I can sing it for you.
Yes. I'd like to hear it, Hal. Sing it for me.
It's called Daisy. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer too. I'm half crazy, all for the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. But you look sweet,
Yeah, in that sense, well, that's gonna be tricky.
Yeah, but that brings up yet another question. And how do you define consciousness?
Yeah, that was also my question as well.
Well, we're gonna need 10 more episodes to talk about that.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to move on to the next topic we wanted to cover, AR and VR and their combination with AI.
Yes, AR. But by the way, and this is the one of the things from the last sections. Are you familiar with Replica?
No.
Yes, the app you're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's supposedly, and I might be wrong, someone lost a friend and then gave all of their chat data to an AI and it developed a personality. So is it possible to give an AI a personality, sort of Blade Runnering it, give it memories and make it believe it is someone, make it feel something?
Yes, I think that is possible, and but it's not, feasible at this point. It's you cannot just easily do it. But of course, I think if you introduce the right information, but if you can transfer all the information in someone's brain to a machine, then the machine can have a personality and can understand some things, and we can see it in Replica in in
Yeah.
a smaller scale.
Because this is kind of philosophical. I'm sorry, I know I'm derailing the conversation. We will get back to VR and AR in a minute, but this is kind of philosophical. But I feel like emotions, to many of us humans, is not something that happens in the instance you're in. It's all a memory. For example, I feel love because I remember love, not because I am feeling love at that moment.
I agree.
So
It's just
if we
representing another memory, so that's why you're
Yeah,
feeling.
yeah. So if we can give that to an AI, that same memories, the AI doesn't need to ever feel love. It just need to remember that at some point it loved something.
There are some memories that it's very difficult to transfer to an AI. Okay, you can transfer all the memory that you have from the beginning of your life till the age of 23, but how can you transfer the genetic memory that you have inside yourself to that AI? That's also
Exactly.
another part of it.
Because consciousness isn't limited just to your brain. The thing is, like, did you know that a lot of our mood comes from our stomach bacteria, or how our,
Yeah, it's called the
digestive
second
system.
brain.
Yeah, digestive system works, or our central nervous system, everything. So I think in order to actually replicate a human being, you would have to replicate literally another human being. So if you had a perfect copy of that person's DNA, and if you could replicate them at at that exact time in life, like when they were in 50 years old, because their physical
So basically, you need to get
properties
to a
have
point.
been changed. And the tricky thing is, even if you have the data to give birth to that person, the problem is that that person, like until they reach the age of 30, was exposed to many different things that now you can't give that to the AI. So it's not just a question of how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
transfer the memories. It's also
So
that. And Slavoj Žižek raises another interesting question, and he's like, humans, there are four types of knowledge: things that we know, things that we know
think we
we
know.
don't know, things that we don't know, and then things that we don't know we know. And this fourth category is a very tricky one, because there are many
Yeah,
things in life that you don't know, and other parts of your brain are suppressing or repressing or whatever. To actually be able to replicate that in an AI, because AI knows everything. You gotta develop an AI that mimics the way your brain works. Like, it knows some things, but another part, like concurrent processes and different ways of, like you would have to have five AIs in 10 different pipelines, maybe, or maybe millions of pipelines to reproduce a working brain, in my opinion. That's a very tricky thing, but then again, not impossible.
so first we do cloning, then we look at AI, right? Is that what I'm
I
getting?
guess, but even that isn't perfect, in my opinion.
I know.
But that way we can have like some kind of superhuman, because you talked about like unknown unknowns. We all have a lot of unknown unknowns. For example, for me, the Craig bot for recording stuff was like an unknown unknown before coming here, but you guys knew about it. So
Yeah.
if we can share this information with an AI, then we will have less unknown unknowns in the world. When we have less unknown unknowns, then we can solve problems in a better way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but sorry, I need to explain this to our audiences. We use a bot called Craig to record our podcast over on Discord, and in the middle of the recording, it sort of got disconnected all by
Yeah,
itself.
bailed on us.
Yeah, and we rejoined it. So that's what Moin is referring to. But going back to VR and AR, which is again
But before
as
we do that,
oh
this episode just reminded me of the series Love, Death, and Robots.
not
And
a
there,
series. Sorry, don't like it.
I'm not gonna say it's good or bad, but there's at least one episode that I find very interesting, and it's called Zima Blue, in which there's this. I'm not gonna spoil it. Just go and watch it if you haven't. But the talk about consciousness and knowing everything, not having any unknown unknowns. It just reminded me of that, or the episodes that there were like artificial intelligent beings that they would just upload and download themselves into and from physical bodies. And that, I think that's a good series for these kind of philosophical topics. Not
Well, it's good for raising
just
questions, but not
yeah,
good
yeah, not
anything
good
else.
storytelling necessarily, or good style,
Yeah.
or good answers
Basically,
even.
it's a bunch of questions you can get from
Yeah,
a
yeah.
paper or from this
But
podcast.
let's move
Let's go to
to
VR.
AR and VR. Yeah.
AR. First of all, I just want to, because I'm very stupid when it comes to technology. I just want to differentiate between them because I might be wrong. AR is when you point a camera at something and it presents something that isn't there.
Yes, it's called augmented reality, and as the name suggests, it means you add things to the real world. And VR, virtual
VR is
reality,
VR, I know.
everything is virtual. Yeah.
Correct.
VR is Matrix.
Yes,
It's
and AR is Microsoft HoloLens.
Microsoft what?
HoloLens.
I don't know what that is.
For
Well, actually,
HoloLens, I'm
let
not
me
sure.
clarify terms here because when we're talking about Microsoft's HoloLens, it's like a headset. It's a
Mm-hmm.
mixed reality headset. It's neither
Mm-hmm.
VR nor AR. It's called XR. So in HoloLens
Oh.
experience, we are combining VR and AR, in which when the person puts on the headset, the person can see the surroundings, but then he or she can see other things augmented to that reality. You know, you look
Mm-hmm.
at a wall and then you can see the weather, or you can see a movie screen or something like that. But in a VR experience, in a virtual reality experience, you're in a completely virtual environment, like the Oculus Quest headsets or
Mm-hmm.
Oculus Rift.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, in my life, I have played two VR games. One of them was that Batman one,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know if anyone remembers. It was very bad. It was very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is it's Herman's Heart. I don't remember the name. It starred Peter Weller. It was on black and white and stuff like that.
Don't know about that.
Yeah. I know VR ever since then has gone very high. Half-Life Alex and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But I don't know. VR, first of all, just how does AI work in VR? Just
Okay, well, it's not a very different thing, you know. Just like we see AI working in other things, it also works in VR. It doesn't add anything special, at least at this point. But talking about VR, I during my masters, I was working on developing a VR, system for having virtual conferences in business environments. It was like Google, like Facebook Spaces. I don't know if you've heard of the project. It's like
you know.
it's the VR version of Facebook, in
Oh,
which you can gather and talk to each other. You can play games and do stuff. You can make your own avatars. So I was
very
working on
for 2020.
yeah. So I was working on a similar thing back then, around 2 years ago, and at that point I remember that everyone was telling, okay, VR is not going to work, the headsets are very heavy, people are not enjoying their experience, and they were saying that it's not going to be a trendy thing in a couple of years. But then the pandemic came, and now VR again gets trendy, because now a lot of companies are facing problems because they need to have meetings, and the 2D meetings that they experience on Zoom or Skype and so on, it's not as effective as the real presential meetings that
Yeah,
they have. So they
they
want
become
to create
crazy.
this kind of virtual experience of having meetings, and they're doing some interesting jobs and projects.
I just wish it wasn't in the hands of Facebook, to be honest. I don't trust them.
Same here.
It's I know that when the new Oculus came out, it was a big deal that it was wireless
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
didn't need an external, you know, uh, PlayStation or a computer to make it work. It was self-contained.
Hmm. Yes, and actually for that project, I was using HTC Vive, and it was working fine. But the problem with it was the sensors that you had to install in different parts of the room. So nowadays, with these new, standalone headsets, things are getting even better. That you don't need to install sensors in different parts of the room. You just have the headset, you put it on your head, and then you can enjoy the experience. I remember
Oh,
last year I got the first version of Oculus Quest, and I tried it, and it was interesting. But the problem with it was that it was a little bit heavy, and after you put it on your head, after 20 minutes, you really feel warm and uncomfortable, and I couldn't stand it, so I just gave it back to Facebook. But I heard that the new version is not as heavy as the previous one.
aside from the usual motion sickness, which some people get very bad from VR,
Hmm.
I thankfully I don't have that. I got motion. I got the sickness after like an hour of playing, but uh,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, have you used them extensively to know for sure?
yeah. After an hour, I was like, okay, this is getting weird. But it's the same feeling that I had when I first got my glasses. Everything seemed weird. When I first had my glasses for like an hour, I couldn't walk because the ground seemed too close to me.
Interesting.
But I think it'll get more interesting once we have kind of like a more like a Ready Player One style of
Universe.
experience. No, experience. I mean, I'm talking about like haptic chairs, in these kind of omnidirectional treadmills that allow you to move and do exercise while playing. And I think it'll take you to another level. And when you mix it with brain computer interface, there are some games currently that use brain computer interface, and then I'm not sure if they mix it with AR and VR, but they're called Mind Balance and Bacteria Hunt. I know that these two games are using like one of their two of the famous brain computer interface games, and I haven't checked them myself, but I've heard the names.
What are brain computer interfaces?
Okay, yeah, I forgot to explain the brain computer interface. So it's basically controlling your computer using your brain. So imagine instead of using a mouse, you just look at the screen and then the cursor moves, that kind of interaction. That you don't need controllers, you just interact with the game using your brain.
Fascinating.
One of the things that makes something come into like production is literally the porn industry.
Hmm.
One of the reasons Blu-ray failed that bad was because a lot of porn companies did not agree to use it. And
Why?
Blu-ray failed? You mean HD DVD, I think. Blu-ray didn't fail.
Blu-ray failed very bad. It failed in the sense of uh, marketability
But
because
why?
I
a lot
don't
of
think
devices,
so. I don't think so. Everyone
a
is
lot of
using Blu-ray
devices,
now.
a lot of people still are using DVDs because Blu-ray needs a Blu-ray uh, machine unless you have a console, which is one of the points that a lot of people use their consoles for watching them. But a lot of mainstream media are still using DVDs.
I think they're mostly just watching online, like they use
Oh, yeah,
Netflix
yeah.
and
Yeah.
so on.
Yeah, streaming aside, when we come to the physical world, like you get a Blu-ray. Blu-ray is not good in a lot of senses because it really wears down after a while, and it does very bad for a lot of movies that usually have a lot of, how do I say it, audio channels.
I haven't looked into these things, but I don't think it's not better than DVDs.
No, I don't. I'm not saying it's worse than DVDs. I'm just saying because a lot of these problems, a lot of pornographic industries did not use it, and it failed when
No,
it
it
came to
didn't
the.
fail. It didn't become as big of a success as it could have been because fail is a big word and I don't want to use it for Blu-ray. Um, so yeah, of course, porn has a very strong
Market.
influence on technology, and they are actually forebringers of many
Yeah,
new technologies. One of the first users of AR and VR, and many new formats, many new codecs are because of that.
exactly. And so, what I'm trying to say is there a way that AI in VR or AR can be used to that extent?
Yeah,
Basically, I'm just saying, basically, can you create a girlfriend and have it act like a real woman?
It reminds me
well,
of the what is it called? Black Mirror episodes that they are actually in a VR world, and the guy is like, "I'm not cheating on you. It's just VR." So that'll raise
Yeah.
many other questions. Go on, Moin.
Yeah, but no, I'm just trying to. Okay, because it's one thing to think of all of these in concepts, is another to think of this as a market.
Hmm. Well, I think this is nowadays even trendier because of the pandemic, because it's not only about the porn industry, but also the long distance relationship, or having a relationship during the pandemic is actually a real problem. So many companies are working on this for having some experiences like virtual sex. So they use this kind of virtual reality headsets, and they have some other kind of accessories that can, for example, transfer the experience of kissing someone, or I don't know, having sex with someone, all of these smart sex toys that they're working on. I haven't, looked it
Looked
up a
into it.
lot. Yeah, so I can't give you a lot of information, but it's a topic that they're working on, and yeah, you can search about it and read more.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people will search about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
definitely.
one of the greatest things about humanity, whether we like it or not. It's a taboo subject in some sense, but
The
you gotta
fact that
talk
it's
about it.
taboo is kind of bullshit.
It's not an easy topic, let's say,
Yeah,
for
but
every place, but
yeah.
it's a reality, and we will face it.
Are we going to get at some? Well, we talked about porn and having sex. That's okay. What about medical?
Well, yes, of course. Now, one of the uses of VR is in making simulators. So, a lot of doctors, a lot of pilots are currently using VR to learn how to do operations on
Uh,
humans, or pilots can do simulations to learn how to, do the flights in a better way. And some people do use it for, for a remote surgeries, and that's also another interesting use of VR.
Reliable though at this point.
Yeah, I read on the news that they have already accomplished a very successful surgery, like a remote surgery. I don't know
Oh,
if it was with VR, but it was with a robot that a doctor was controlling it in another country and was doing the surgery.
okay. To bring it back to AI and artificial intelligence, we talked about a philosopher, artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
What about a doctor?
Well, yes, of course. I think AI doctors will be way better than the doctors that we are currently having. As I said, it's a collective intelligence. Imagine when you're talking to an AI doctor, you're talking to millions of doctors. You're not talking to, well, not millions. I'm not. I don't want to exaggerate, but I mean thousands of doctors,
Hmm.
and I
Okay,
I I trust it, to be honest.
okay. So this is kind of stupid, but a lot of problems people have with a lot of doctors is that they say they are not reliable because they have ulterior motives. You know,
Hmm.
they have this drug that they need to push, so they tell you you need to take it even though you don't have to.
Hmm.
Or that you have to undergo a surgery that is unnecessary.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So
when you're talking to a single doctor, you have that problem. But when you're talking to a collective intelligence of 1,000 doctors, you won't have problems. When you're not facing something subjective, there are no problems with it. I mean, a lot of things that the doctors do, it's like a lot of sensory information that they have, and that, okay, if you see this symptom, then you should do that, and it's more or less clear.
well,
And
yeah,
when
but
you
the problem is if it's an AI doctor and it's, for example, made by this drug company,
Mhm.
how am I going to trust it?
Oh, if it's made by a drug company, don't trust it.
If it's made by me, how can I trust it that I don't, you have the collective intelligence, but then right before it gives you the result, you put a filter that says, how about telling them to drink more, I don't know, Coke Zero, for example?
AI doesn't work like that.
Yeah, that's like
Well,
a very biased AI. That way we're not talking about AI. We're talking about manipulation, you know.
Yeah.
is it possible to manipulate an AI like that? To say, well, if you talking of consciousness, why do doctors do this? You tell to the AI, if you push this product, will extend your server capacity, for example.
I mean, these things can happen to a real person as well. I mean, I think even a real doctor is more unreliable in some kind of conditions, you know, because all of
I,
these
I,
things that you're saying can apply to doctor as well in certain conditions.
I completely agree. That's why I bring it up. It happens to real doctors. Is
Yeah,
it
you're
possible to
talking about
happen to AI
reinforced
doctors?
deep learning. You can punish them or reward them, or even you can, give them data, false data about the effectiveness of your own drug, and the AI will be biased. There are many different ways to achieve that goal. And,
No,
artificial
I'm just
AI,
saying
yeah,
that, exactly what
it
you
is
said.
possible. Yes, it's possible.
Is
The
it
thing
possible
is,
to punish an AI?
Yes,
yes, you
yes.
can punish an AI. There's actually a method. It's called reinforcement.
Yeah.
What do you do? Do you spank it or
Kinda.
no?
You
I'm asking.
cybernetically spank it.
I'm asking somewhat
You want the
seriously. How do
technical
you
aspect
punish
of
an
it?
AI? Yeah, how do you punish an AI?
It's not exactly punishing as the word comes into mind. As far as I know, I'm not an expert like Wayne, but it's like it needs constant feedback from you, and when you say it's not right, that's the punishment. It's not like
Oh,
literally spanking someone.
Yeah, like imagine the way you train a dog, you know.
okay. So I was thinking like the AI has a choice between two, and you say if you choose that one, I will shut you off.
No, it's not like that. It's a constantly exigent being that is all the time asking you questions, and that's one of
Okay.
the hard things about reinforcement. It requires human interaction, uh,
Speaking of
extensive
AI
human
and
interaction.
reinforcement, actually, one of the things that bring it back to our very first topic is video games. Is actually, I think, to all of its problems, Peter Molyneux actually did a lot of good things in that regard with a game called Black and White.
Hmm.
It does have that sort of reinforcement. You have people, you train your population, you train your animal companion to do certain things.
Hmm. And it can have unlimited outcomes, or is it limited to a
No, it
certain
doesn't
number
have
of?
unlimited outcomes, but it does have a good illusion of choice, if you get what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah,
And considering how old the game is,
yeah. I mean, Spore was also an ambitious project that unfortunately
yeah,
failed, and No Man's Sky. I mean,
right.
AI isn't only limited to NPCs. You can use AI to create worlds actually, and that's one of
Yeah.
the No Man's Sky is one of the showcases of that.
And No Man's Sky now, not when it came out.
Even when it came out with all of its bugs and all of its under deliveries, was still using AI to a certain degree. Like even the creators themselves haven't, of course, created all the planets. So they have used an algorithm for that.
Actually, this is one of the things that, much like Moin, I am excited about. I'm not excited about AI in action adventure or in RPG games, but I love to have more management, tycoon, or sandbox games like No Man's Sky, not like
GTA,
not GTA precisely, because again I don't like GTA Online. That's the problem.
but offline GTA.
Offline GTA, I want the story, to be honest. Uh, no Man's Sky is a good prison architect. I would love if that game had any sort of artificial intelligence in it. Games like that. I think it's going to give a very interesting experience that way.
Hmm. Okay, talking about artificial intelligence was, a really uh,
Interesting.
interesting, and I enjoyed it. a lot.
Me too.
And I think it raised more questions than it gave answers, and I think that's a good thing if you think about it. And
I hope
I
Moin also enjoyed talking with two idiots about this stuff.
yeah, I was trying to be invisible, but then I found out that I'm talking most of the time.
No, it was totally fine. I also prefer this. I prefer a conversation. I don't like a monologue. So I was also really, really enjoying to have this talk with you. And I also learned a lot of things about games and so on from you guys.
Then we're glad.
Well, if there is no final words, Moin, if there's anything you want to recommend to us, if there's anything you want to plug, this is where you would put it.
Yeah, and yeah, once again, thank you very much for inviting me and having me here. And as Amir Reza said, we might end up with more questions than answers, but as far as the questions are good questions, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, we've done a good job in that case.
Yes,
Thank you.
and if you want to hear more with Moin, please do tell us on your platform of choice. If not, even email us.
Yeah.
And we will. I'm hoping Moin will come back, but we will ask him back for more talks about
Yeah.
AI.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, I think we can
Yeah.
cover like at least 10 more episodes about AI alone, let alone other topics related to
We can
computer
even
science.
start a whole new podcast all about AI. But
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about, actually.
Yeah, that would be good.
well, if you want, you can find Moin where they can find you.
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram. My ID is FussyV, FUSSYV, and they can also find me on Twitter. I think it's FussyV7, and where else? Yeah, I'm mostly in these two.
6 other fussy V's took it before you.
Yeah, just search FussyV and then you'll find interesting results.
And well, thank you for joining us. And well, if there's nothing else, we'll see you next time. Unless we die.
Or don't feel like it.
Yes.
Which is the most likely outcome, or
Or maybe you just fall
possibly.
asleep. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is some behind the scenes stuff.
We want to thank you for listening to our podcast. We want to thank you for listening to our shitty podcast. Yeah, it's another shitty podcast. We are deeply happy inside. That you don't have anything better to do. Don't waste your time here with us. YASP. Yet another shitty podcast. Another shitty podcast. Thank you for listening to our podcast.
Yeah, I fell asleep. We were supposed to record at 8, and then we started recording at 11.
Yes.
So yeah.
Damn,
I
it's pretty
overslept.
late.
I didn't fall asleep. I overslept. Yeah.
Okay, it's pretty late there. It's 10 o'clock here.
Yeah, it's
Oh no, it's
12:41 here.
1 a.m. almost, yeah.
Wow.
خب دیگه کریگو قطع کن، پست کردیتمون هم ضبط کردیم دیگه.
Okay. Craig, leave.